A fist cracked into a wooden post and split it down the middle. Wood chips flew across the floor. A second punch landed, then a low kick snapped a bamboo pole in half. The crack echoed through the soundstage. Nobody moved. 40 crew members stood in the dark and watched one man hit that post again and again, hour after hour. His knuckles were raw and bleeding. Beside him, a German shepherd lay still, ears up, watching the door. They were all watching the door, because the man hitting that post was Lin Bao-cheng, the most disciplined master in Hong Kong, and he had been waiting 3 hours for an actor who still had not come. When that door finally opened, the 3 quiet words Lin spoke would end a career on the spot. What did the master see that nobody else did? Stay with me on this one. The morning of that shoot, the call sheet said 6 o'clock. Lin Bao-cheng was already on the soundstage at 4. He always was. He swept his own corner of the floor. He checked the chalk marks with his own hands. Then he set a small brass stopwatch on the table beside his tea, the way another man might set down his keys. That watch had belonged to his teacher. Lin had carried it for 30 years. To him it was not a clock, it was a promise. When a man says he will be somewhere, he is there. That was the whole of it. Now you have to understand who Lin was in that city. He was not a movie star the way we think of one today. He was a master first. He had broken his hands 100 times learning his craft. He had trained half the stuntmen in Hong Kong. When Lin walked onto a set, men who feared nobody stood a little straighter, not because he shouted. He never shouted, because he had earned it one honest day at a time. He had a way of looking at a man that made the man want to be better. No speeches. Just that look and the example of his own 2 hands. People told stories about him. They said he had once stood in the rain for 6 hours because a student had asked to meet him at a certain corner, and the student never showed, and Lin waited anyway because he had given his word to be there. Some of the stories were true. The ones that were true were the quiet ones. This film was supposed to be his biggest. The studio had poured a fortune into it, real sets, a full crew, a budget that made the old hands nervous just to look at. People had waited years for Lin to get a picture this size, and now it was here, and the whole industry was watching to see what he would do with it. And at the center of all that money, the studio had placed a bet. A young man named Desmond Royce. Desmond was beautiful. There's no other word for it. The camera loved him the way it loves only a few people in a generation. He was quick. He was charming. He had real talent in his hands and his feet. The studio boss called him the future. Posters were already printed. The whole picture was built to launch him. One big fight scene, the old master against the rising star, and a brand new face would be born overnight. Everybody could see it. And Desmond could see it most of all. That was the problem, though nobody said it out loud just yet. The boy had been told he was special so many times that he had started to believe the rules were for other people. He came late to readings. He skipped training. When older men gave him notes, he smiled and nodded and did exactly as he pleased. And the studio let him because the studio needed him more than he needed the studio, or so everybody thought. The older men had seen this before. They had watched a dozen handsome boys come up the same way, certain the world would always bend for them. Most of them learned. A few never did. The ones who never did, the business ate alive sooner or later. Nobody bothered to warn Desmond. He wouldn't have listened. Beside Lin's chair, flat on the cool concrete, lay a German shepherd named Kowloon. That dog went everywhere Lin went, sat through every take, never barked on set, not once. The crew joked that Kowloon had better manners than most of the actors. All morning the dog watched the door, ears moving, waiting for something the people hadn't noticed yet. And there was one more man on that stage you need to know about, an old stuntman. The crew called him Old Tiger. His real name was Cheung Fai. 30 years before, he had been the most fearless body in the business. He had fallen off buildings. He had been set on fire for the camera. Half the famous death scenes you've ever seen from that era, that was him, taking the hit so a star didn't have to. He never had his name above a title, he never wanted it, the work was enough. Old Tiger was sick now. Everyone knew and nobody said. His heart was failing. He kept a little brown bottle of pills in his shirt pocket, and he touched it sometimes without thinking. This film was his last job. He had told Lynn that himself, quietly, weeks before, the two of them sitting on a bench outside the studio gate after everyone else had gone home. One more credit, a little money for his daughter, a chance to stand in front of a camera one more time before the end. He hadn't asked for sympathy. He had asked for one good fall. Lynn had promised him he would have it. And Lynn did not make promises he could not keep. That, more than the skill, more than the discipline, was the thing that made men trust him. And here is the thing that mattered. Old Tiger could not work all day anymore. His body would not allow it. The doctors had been plain about it. He had a window. A few good hours in the morning while his strength held and the medicine was fresh. After that, his heart began to skip and his hands began to shake, and it was not safe for him to be thrown or to fall. Lynn knew all of this. So Lynn had built the entire day around it. The big fight came first, while Old Tiger was strong. The old man would take one fall. One beautiful fall, the kind only he could still do, and it would live in that picture forever. That was the plan. That was the gift Lynn had quietly arranged for his old friend, and he had told no one, not the studio, not the assistant directors. He had simply ordered the schedule the way he wanted it and let them think it was about the light. 6 o'clock came. The crew was ready. The lights were hot. Old Tiger was in costume, sitting very still, saving everything he had for the moment. He had eaten lightly. He had taken his medicine on the dot. He had done everything a careful man could do to be ready. 6 o'clock, no Desmond. 7 o'clock, no Desmond. The assistant directors made calls. The phone in his hotel room rang and rang. Nobody picked up. They sent a runner across town to knock on his door. The runner came back alone, shaking his head. The clock on the wall kept moving, and beside Lynn's tea the little brass stopwatch kept its own quiet count. And the window an old dying man needed began to close minute by minute, while everyone pretended not to watch it. By 8 o'clock the soundstage had gone quiet in a bad way, not restful, coiled, like a held breath. People found small jobs to do so they wouldn't have to stand still. A grip wound and rewound the same cable. A makeup girl checked a brush that didn't need checking. Everyone felt it. Nobody named it. And the longer it went, the worse it got, because everyone in that room could do the same math. They knew what the schedule meant. They knew why the fight came first. Word like that travels on a set, even when nobody says it out loud. They watched the old man and they watched the clock and they did the arithmetic, and not one of them could do a single thing about it. Old Tiger sat in his costume in a folding chair near the wall. He didn't complain. Men of his generation didn't. But Lynn watched him, and Lynn saw the small things. He saw the old man's hand drift up to the brown bottle in his pocket. He saw him take a pill dry, without water, and close his eyes for a moment. He saw the color leave his face. He saw the way the old man's foot had started to tap, not from impatience, but because the body does that when the heart is laboring. Lynn walked over and crouched beside him. They spoke low, just the two of them. "How are you?" Lynn said. It was not really a question. Old Tiger smiled. "I'm fine, Sifu. I can still do it, just give me the word." But they both knew. The strength the old man had saved since dawn was burning away while they waited. The medicine in his blood was past its best hour. To throw this man now, to send him falling onto pads with a heart like his, was no longer a stunt. It was a danger to his life. The window Lynn had protected so carefully had closed while everyone stood around doing nothing. Lynn put a hand on the old man's shoulder, just for a second, and felt how thin he had become under the costume. Then he stood. Lynn didn't say a word. He went back to his chair, sat down, and picked up his tea. Kowloon lifted his head. And then just past 9 in the morning, 3 hours and some minutes after the call, the side door of the soundstage swung open. Desmond Royce walked in. You could smell the night on him before he reached the lights. Whiskey and cigarettes and somebody else's perfume. He had his sunglasses on indoors. He carried his shoes in one hand and crossed the concrete in his socks like he owned the place. He pulled the glasses down his nose, looked at the lights, looked at the waiting crew, and he grinned. Sorry, he said, loud, easy, not sorry at all. Long night, you know how it is. Come on, let's make some movie magic. Nobody laughed. Nobody moved. 40 people who had been there since before dawn just looked at him. Desmond kept talking. He always could talk. He said the traffic was bad. Then he said his alarm hadn't gone off. The two excuses didn't fit together and he didn't seem to notice. Then he said something about a producer he'd been having drinks with, dropping the name like it was a shield he could hide behind. He rolled his shoulders. He threw a couple of loose shadow punches, showing off, like the 3 hours were nothing, like they were lucky he had come at all. He even glanced toward the makeup chair, expecting someone to jump up and start fixing his face. When nobody did, a flicker of something crossed his face. Confusion. He wasn't used to a room that didn't move for him. He covered it with another grin and clapped his hands together, loud, as if he could start the day by sheer force of charm. Lin set down his tea. It made a small sound on the table. Just a cup on wood, but on that silent stage it was the loudest thing in the room. Kowloon stood up. Lin crossed the floor. He stopped in front of the young man. He was not angry, not on his face. He looked at Desmond the way you look at something you have already decided about. He held the young man's eyes, and he said 3 words quietly, so quietly that the men in the back had to lean in to catch them. Pack your things. For a second Desmond didn't understand. The grin stayed where it was. What? Pack your things, Lin said again. Same voice, no heat in it at all. You're done, get off my set. The whole stage held its breath, because every person there knew exactly what Desmond was. He was the studio's golden boy. He was the future. The posters were printed. The picture was built around his face, and a martial arts master in a plain gray shirt had just told him to leave. Over 3 hours on a clock, with a fortune on the line. Desmond laughed. He actually laughed. You can't fire me, old man. You don't pay me. The studio pays me, and the studio loves me. He pushed his sunglasses back up. Call Mr. Tang, go on, see how that goes for you. He picked his shoes back up and sauntered toward the door, loose and certain, a man who had never once been told no and made it stick. At the door he turned around. I'll come back this afternoon, he said, when you've calmed down. And he was gone. The door banged shut behind him, and then strangely the tension went out of the room. Lin turned around. He looked calm. He looked, if anything, lighter than he had all morning. He walked back to his chair and picked up his tea like nothing at all had happened. Take an early lunch, he told the crew, gentle now. Go on, rest. We'll find the day. The assistant directors looked at each other and shrugged. People started drifting off the floor. Somebody made a quiet joke and somebody else finally laughed. The lights came down to half. Lin went to old Tiger, helped him up out of the chair with both hands and walked him slowly toward the dressing rooms, talking softly, the dog padding along behind them. It was over, people thought. The master had made his point. The kid would slink back, apologize, and the cameras would roll by the afternoon. These things blew over. They always did. You don't shut down the biggest picture of the year over one bad morning. Kowloon stopped in the middle of the floor. The dog turned and faced the big front doors of the soundstage, ears up, a low sound starting in his chest, not quite a growl. Nobody noticed. The big front doors slammed open hard enough to bounce off the wall. Mr. Tang Weilok came through them like a storm front. He was the head of the studio. He owned the building they were all standing in. And he had Desmond Royce 2 steps behind him, sunglasses off now, that smirk back on his face, a boy who had run straight to the one man who could make it all go away. Tang did not waste time. "You sent my star home," he said, crossing the floor fast. "Over what? A few hours. Have you lost your mind, Lin?" Lin set his tea down again. "He was 3 hours late. He came in drunk. He cost us the whole morning." "He's the star," Tang shouted, and his voice cracked across the empty stage. "That's what stars do. They show up late, they drink. You think I care? I care about the face on the poster. I care about the money, and the money is him." He jabbed a finger toward Desmond. "Not you, him." And there it was, the thing nobody had said out loud all morning. The studio boss said it for everyone to hear. He kept going. He told Lin exactly how it was going to be. Desmond would be back on his mark in 20 minutes. Lin would shake his hand, smile, and direct the scene like a professional. And if Lin would not do that, then Tang would shut the whole production down. Today, he would write it off as a loss. And he would make sure, with all the power and all the friends that he had, that Lin Baocheng never directed another picture in Hong Kong as long as he lived. Then he turned and swept his arm across the room, at the grips and the gaffers and the camera crew standing frozen in the dark. "And all these people," he said, "all these people who feed their families on this picture, they go home with nothing, because of your pride. Think about that, master." It was a clean move. You have to give him that. In 1 minute, Tang had turned the whole thing from one rude actor into something much bigger. It wasn't about respect anymore. It was about every paycheck in the building. It was about Lin's entire life's work. It was about a man with real power, ready to burn it all down just to win. And the terrible part was that it would work on most men. Most men would shake the hand. Most men would swallow it and call it being reasonable. Lin had seen reasonable men do exactly that all his life. He had watched good men make the small surrender, the one that seems like nothing at the time, and then spend the rest of their days a little smaller for it. He knew the shape of that bargain by heart. He had simply never taken it. Desmond folded his arms and enjoyed it. Lin was quiet for a long moment. Everyone waited for him to break. He had to break. No sane man bets his career and his crew's wages on 3 hours. Lin looked at Tang, and he said very simply, "Then shut it down." You could have heard a pin drop. Tang blinked. He had played that card 1,000 times and it had never once failed. And the old master had just looked the most powerful man in the room dead in the eye and called the bet. If you're still with me, take 1 second and hit that subscribe button. What this old man does in the next few minutes is the whole reason I wanted to tell you this story. All right, back to it. Tang was not used to being called. For a second he had nothing to say. His mouth opened and closed. Then Desmond, who never could keep his mouth shut, decided to help. "Come on," Desmond said, laughing. "All this drama. Over what? So I missed a few hours of throwing some washed-up old man around the room." He nodded toward the dressing rooms, toward where old Tiger had gone. "What's the big loss? He can barely stand up. Half the studio is wondering why you put a corpse in the picture in the first place." The room went cold. Lin turned to look at him, slow. And for the first time all morning, something moved behind the master's calm. Not anger exactly. Something older and harder than anger. "You don't know who that man is," Lin said quietly. "Do you?" Lin walked to the center of the floor. He did not raise his voice. He never did. But every person on that stage leaned in to catch the words. "That man," Lin said, "is Chung Fai. You call him a washed-up old man. 30 years ago he was the bravest body in this whole business. There isn't a stuntman alive in this city who didn't learn something by watching him. He fell off things that should have killed him. He let them set him on fire. He took the hits, over and over so the pretty faces could keep being pretty. He took them for men exactly like you, and he never once asked for his name on anything. Desmond's smile flickered. His heart is failing now, Lynn went on. The doctors have told him how this ends, and it ends soon. This film is the last thing he will ever do. One last job, a little money for his daughter. One more fall in front of a camera while he still can. Lynn's voice stayed level, and somehow that made it land harder. He can only work a few hours a day now. A few good hours in the morning while the medicine holds and his heart stays steady. I built this entire day around those hours. The fight came first so he would be strong, and so he would be safe. I told no one why. I didn't think I had to explain to grown men why you don't waste a dying man's strength. He let that sit. And we waited 3 hours for you. Lynn looked straight at Desmond. 3 hours while that man sat in his costume, saving every ounce of strength he had left for the one fall he came here to give. His window closed while you slept it off in some hotel bed. I can't throw him now, not with his heart the way it is, not safely. You didn't just waste my morning, boy. You took the last shot of a dying man's life and you poured it down the drain. And then you walked in here and called him a corpse. Nobody breathed. Desmond opened his mouth, and for once nothing came out. The smirk was gone. He looked around the room and found 40 faces looking back at him, and not one of them was on his side. Then Lynn turned to Mr. Tang, and here the master did something nobody saw coming. He spoke softer, almost gentle. "You don't remember him, do you?" Lynn said. "You should. 1948, a little picture nobody believed in." The lead actor froze at the top of a high fall, and the whole production was about to collapse and take all your money down with it. A young stuntman climbed up there and did the fall himself, from higher than anyone had asked him to. He landed wrong. He cracked 2 ribs on the way down. He got up anyway and finished the day so the picture could be saved. Lynn paused. "That picture made you, Mr. Tang. It was the first real money you ever saw. You built all of this on top of it, everything you own. This building, that desk you sit behind." Tang's face had changed. The fury had gone out of it. Underneath was something that looked a great deal like shame. "That stuntman," Lynn said, "is the old man in your dressing room right now. The one your golden boy just called a corpse. You didn't only forget his name, Mr. Tang. You forgot that you owe him your whole life." For a long moment nobody said anything at all. The lights hummed. Somewhere in the back a man set down a cup very carefully, afraid to make a sound. Tang stood there in the middle of his own soundstage and looked at the closed door of the dressing room as if he could see through it into a day 30 years gone. You could watch it move across his face. The young man he had been. The fall he had taken for granted. All the years he had let pass without once saying thank you. A powerful man is rarely made to stand still and look at the cost of his own success. Tang was standing still now. Then Mr. Tang Wylok, the most powerful man in the building, walked slowly across the floor, past Lynn, and stood in front of Desmond Royce. "Give me your access pass," Tang said. Desmond blinked. "Mr. Tang, come on, you said. You told me I was the future, you said." "Give it to me." Tang's voice was very quiet now. "You're off this picture. You're off every picture. As of this minute, your contract with my studio is finished." Desmond laughed, that disbelieving laugh of a man whose whole world is tilting and who cannot make himself accept it yet. "You can't be serious. Over an old cripple. I'm the future. You said it yourself. The posters are already printed." "Then we'll print new ones," Tang said. He held out his hand and waited. For 10 long seconds Desmond just stood there, looking from Tang to Lynn and back again, waiting for one of them to laugh and tell him it was a joke. Neither one did. The boy who had never been told no was being told no by the only 2 men whose no actually counted. His hand was shaking when he finally dug the pass out of his pocket and dropped it into Tang's palm. Two security men walked him to the doors. He went loud, the way frightened men do, throwing names and threats over his shoulder. He said he'd sue. He said he'd ruin them. He said they'd be begging him to come back by next week. Nobody answered. Nobody even watched him go. The doors closed on him and the soundstage was quiet again. Lin picked his tea back up. It had gone cold hours ago. He drank it anyway. Here is what the trade papers never printed, the part that mattered more than any of it. The next morning, Lin Baocheng came in at 4 o'clock again. He swept his corner. He checked the marks. He set the brass stopwatch beside his tea. And at 6, when old Tiger arrived, fresh and rested, with a full day's window of strength in him and the medicine new in his blood, the cameras were already loaded and waiting. They shot his fall first, before anything else. It was, the crew would say for years afterward, the most beautiful thing they ever watched a man do. Cheung Fai stood at the top of the rig, an old man with a failing heart, and for about 4 seconds he wasn't old anymore. He went off the edge clean, twisting in the air the way he had taught 2 generations of younger men to twist, and he hit the pads exactly on his mark, and he held the landing like a photograph. The whole crew, 40 hard professionals who had seen everything, stood up and applauded on a closed set. You're not supposed to do that. They did it anyway. Lin called cut. He walked over and helped the old man to his feet with both hands, the same way he had the day before. Old Tiger was breathing hard. He was grinning like a boy. "One take," Lin said. "It's perfect, it's done, it's in the picture forever." Cheung Fai held onto the master's hands a moment longer than he needed to. "Thank you, Sifu," he said. "That was all. Some things don't need many words. Old Tiger passed away that winter." Quietly at home, with his daughter beside him. But before he went, he got to sit in a dark theater and watch himself fall through the air one last time on a screen the size of a wall, while a room full of strangers gasped. His daughter said it was the proudest she ever saw him. The little bit of money from that last job paid for his funeral, and there was some left over for her. Lin made sure of that too, though he never told a soul. The film came out the next year. They found another young man for the part. He was good. He worked hard. He showed up at 4 in the morning every single day, because by then the story of what had happened on that soundstage had spread to every studio in the city, and every actor in Hong Kong understood exactly what it meant. The picture did well. Lin's name carried it. And Desmond Royce, Mr. Tang, was as good as his word. Desmond never made another picture. Not for that studio, and not for any of the others, because Tang made a few calls and the whole town knew the story within a month. Not just that he was late. Latecomers get forgiven. They knew what he had said about a dying man and why he had said it, and that he had walked in 3 hours late from a night of drinking to do it. No producer wanted that on a set. The face the camera had loved so much turned up in a few small roles, then a few smaller ones, then nothing at all. The future, it turned out, did not need him after all. He had real talent. That was the saddest part. He had everything. But he believed talent was the whole job, and it isn't. It never was. The job is showing up. The job is the people standing around you who showed up too and what you owe them for it. Desmond thought talent could outrun respect. For a while it looked like it could. It can't. It never could. Years later, somebody asked Lin if he ever regretted it. All that money. The studio's biggest gamble gone in 3 quiet words. Wasn't he afraid the day he said it that he had thrown his whole career away? Lin thought about it. Then he reached over and picked up the little brass stopwatch his teacher had given him, the one he still kept beside his tea, and he turned it over in his hand. "A man's time is the only thing he can't get back," he said. "When you waste another man's time, you are spending something of his that he will never see again. Most of the time, you can't measure what you took. That morning I could measure it down to the minute." He set the watch back down. No, I was never afraid. I knew exactly what those 3 hours cost. The boy is the one who never understood the price. That was always going to catch up with him. It catches up with everyone in the end. The dog was old by then too. Kowloon lay at his feet the way he always had, ears still up, still watching the door. Lin reached down and rested a hand on the dog's head, and the two of them sat there in the quiet, an old master and an old friend, while outside the light went down on another long, honest day. And that's the whole of it.